lot to take in. If you are newer to RBA and Splunk in general, and feel free to ask questions if you guys aren't already. I know we may mention that we have some people standing by to take your questions, so please interact with us. Okay, let's now jump into the best part. You guessed it, the hands-on portion. Okay, so if any of you have participated in Boss of the SOC, you will know this theme here today, the Frothly theme, very, very well. So for those of you who haven't participated, let me give you a quick introduction. So this organization that we represent here today, Frothly. Now, Frothly makes knockoff versions of many classic beers like Hetty Popper and Pinely, the red-headed stepchild. Today, you are Alice Bluebird, the newest detection engineer at Frothly. Congratulations. She was a former security analyst that decided to try her hand at detection engineering. Now, we're going to be using a bots dataset, specifically version 4, which has a bunch of scenarios revolving around APTs, advanced persistent threats. Like I mentioned, if you're not familiar with Boss of the SOC, I believe the handout for the PDF slides has a link to where you can check out Bot's website there. And also, you can always reach out to your account team, your SE, to get more information. But essentially, it's a world-class blue team event, super competitive, a lot of fun, participated back when I was a customer. So it's just a great way to get more hands-on experience with Splunk and just try your hand at security, really, with Splunk. So just fun time, highly, highly recommended. Another quick note about our data set today is going to be heavy on the endpoint logs, and we're going to obviously be aligning to the MITRE attack, be some PowerShell in there as well, some obfuscated CLI commands, things of that nature. Since this data set was constructed back in August of 2019, we have no choice but to do the absolute unthinkable, which is run an all time. Yes, you should never do that. If you're doing that, don't do that anymore. Anyways, today, throw that rule out the window. That's what we're going to be searching on all time. And it shouldn't have too much performance, as this the time range was in 1 day, so shouldn't be any impact on performance. Listed here on the slide are the important data sets that we're going to be investigating here today, largely endpoint logs, firewall, IDS, IPS, things of that nature. And these are pivotal for really catching any attack, or if you want to have any hopes of catching any attackers, right? We need to span across various different data sources because, well, if you don't, then you'll be blind to exactly what went on, and you'll have a harder time triaging and investigating. All right, so we're going to take a quick minute here. I believe some of you have probably already tried to log in, and hopefully there were no issues. But here will be your credentials for today. I'm just going to go over to my instance and make sure I'm still up and running. Okay. All right, so one thing I'd like to do is personalize my Splunk instance to my liking. So I kind of want to take a pause from the slides and walk you guys through what I like to do whenever I'm entering a new Splunk environment. So first thing, hit our drop down here, work user or workshop user, account settings. And here, full name, you can put whatever you like, but I'm gonna go with Mike Mims. And now if you just exit out of this page, it won't register your name up here. So click the Splunk Enterprise Security logo here at the top left, and it should now show your username. All right, so we're gonna come back under this drop down. This time we're gonna click Preferences. You can switch to your time frame or time zone rather, but do make sure that your default app is set to RBA Journey, and I believe it is set to that by default, so we shouldn't have to make any changes there. The biggest one being our SPL editor up here at the top. We click that. We then get some options around how we want our search bar to perform. The first tab here, General, first option, Search Assistance. I like to select Full personally, and I'll show you guys here or why in a second. I like to toggle on the line numbers in the search auto format, okay? Next, you can click over to Themes. If the bright white is a little bit too much for you, you can switch it over to dark mode or black and white. All right. And once you have your settings applied, go ahead and hit the green apply button down there at the bottom right. Okay, so here is the search bar. This is what we're going to be interacting with. And I told you guys that I'll show you why I like to have those settings selected. So that first setting that we chose, the search assistant, this is that option displaying right here. You can see as we type, we get information regarding our deployment, right? What data we have, the commands, what parameters they require. And if you want some more information on it, you can click More. And this brings a drop down here. If you're curious on the syntax, you may have something that's not quite working. Hit the drop down on syntax, right? Get a lot of information right here without having to leave your Splunk instance, all right? But now in the case you do need to leave your Splunk instance, we have a link to our documentation right here. So if we click that, opens up a new tab, and now you can learn everything you need to know about the stats command. Okay, so this will work for any command that we have available inside of Splunk, or any command you have available inside Splunk, as it might vary. Now, if for whatever reason this is a bit annoying, you do have the option to deselect auto open. And here, this little drop down caret will then close that. And now, as I continue to throw commands and SPL inside of the search bar, it no longer pops up. But it's ready to go when and if I need it. So that's why I personally like that setting. Now, the other two settings that we toggled on were the line count, okay, and the search auto format, okay. The line count, obviously, that one just counts the different lines that we have. So it just helps with troubleshooting, right? If you have an SPL query that you're working on and it's not working properly, and you're reaching out for help, it's awesome, or it's easy to just say, hey, line 3, your table command is, wrong for this reason, versus if you didn't have that, we didn't have this, it would look like this, a nice long Unix or Linux command, right? At the command line, where it just pipes everything together on a one-liner. Okay, so obviously this is okay because it's not much SPL. However, if you're working on, maybe 10 lines of code here, troubleshooting might become a little cumbersome. So there you have it. Nice quick little setup for your Splunk environment, getting us ready for our labs we're about to partake in. Moving right along. So, pink word, yep.
Hey, Mike, it's Blake. Hey, I'm helping a few customers that are having trouble logging in. I just want to broadcast, is anyone else not able to log in to their Splunk server? Just as, I guess, the best way to initiate that problem, to tell me about it is in the QA window. Then one of us will solve that problem as they roll in.
Awesome, appreciate that, Blake. No, I do not want to update. All right. So, whenever you see, pink words here on the screen, this would indicate you need to take action, right? So this is that hands-on portion, okay? So when you see pink words, we need you to do something. The first exercise is a review or an overview for those who are familiar with assets and identities, the framework inside of Splunk Enterprise Security. And now we created an app here for this workshop to guide us through, or help guide us through, the exercises and the searches here in the workshop. Breaking down some more terminology here, assets, by definition, are some sort of networked system. Some common sources of asset data are typically your CMDB or some sort of configuration management database. Active Directory is another common and really good one. Vulnerability scanners, endpoint or EDR solutions, right? Endpoint detection and response are all really good to populate your assets or asset table. One or more of these can be used to create this asset list. All right, so you don't look at it as one source of truth. Rather, pull from multiple data sources, as some data sources will be a little bit more verbose in certain areas than others, right? And it's important to understand the assets on your network, right, for ranking and prioritizing them for your alerts. Some key fields to be aware of and that are needed for this lookup table are IP, nt_host, DNS, and MAC address. Now, some other helpful ones are category, priority, and business unit. We kind of touched on those in those other use cases prior, right? So those are also ones to consider utilizing. Identities. These are a set of names that belong to an identity or an individual user or account. These identities can be ingested via one or multiple integrations with, you guessed it, Active Directory and other cloud identity providers or an HR system such as Workday. The key field for this lookup table is the identity field, and it's a multi-value field. All right, so this comes in handy when you have an admin account, you have a normal user account, right? This will take all of the accounts into consideration, okay? And just like with assets, try and populate the category, priority, and business unit for this lookup table as well. The integration of assets and identities into other frameworks is really important inside of Splunk Enterprise Security. Initially, we need to normalize our system and user identities in the risk object when we write to the risk index. Then normalize, or try not to normalize afterwards, okay? Try to normalize when you're writing to the index versus afterwards. All right, everyone, so here is the hands-on portion here. We have a pink indicator here, all right? So we're gonna go into our labs, and the very first exercise, assets and identities, or asset and identity exploration. And here you should see a dashboard just like this. And what this is telling us, okay, so starting right here, where are the assets? So you can see here that we're looking for B stool or bud stool for those who, again, are familiar with bots. And we're doing a head count of 1. So we're just getting one event related to our user bud here. All right, and you can see that we made the make mention of the category field, priority field, and the business unit field. These two are not being populated for some reason, and that's what we're looking to solve. And here we've ran another search that is expanding our identity lookup table, and we're now piping out the appropriate values for these two fields here, okay? So this is showing us that we do indeed have assets and identities configured properly. However, they may not be enabled for all of our data sources. Okay, so there won't be a correlation or an automatic correlation for that matter in the environment. All right, we just talked through that. So we're going to go down the route to validate our assets and identities lookup tables are being automatically applied to all of our data sources. Okay. Now I want to walk you through this, as this will be a different app. Okay. So what we're going to be heading into now is Splunk Enterprise Security. Okay. So keep your tab open with our app here for RBA, which is the RBA Journey, I believe. Yeah, RBA Journey. Keep that open and just open up Splunk Enterprise Security in the new tab here. So apps, right click, new tab, Enterprise Security. And once you've landed here on this landing page, this is where we're now going to walk through the steps of validating our assets and identities. So we're going to go into configure, content, allied, configure, data enrichment, asset and identity management. So this is where the lookup tables for our assets and identities live. Okay, you can see that we have 2 enabled right now. But what we're primarily concerned with is those lookup tables being automatically applied to all of our data sources. All right, and so here we see that it's currently disabled. Okay, so it's not automatically being applied. We're going to toggle on the enable for all source types, so we get that automatic enrichment. Just know that you are able to specify specific source types if needed. Okay, so you would click that and add whatever source types you need. Okay, so make sure and select the first option, enable for all source types, and click save. Close that out. I'm gonna click ahead here. This is exactly what we just did. Again, this is making mention of how you're able to select specific source types if needed. Okay. All right, so that leads us into MITRE ATT&CK. Let's break this down a little bit and talk about why this is important to map to some sort of cybersecurity framework to, again, help enrich the data that the analyst sees. So MITRE ATT&CK is a globally accessible knowledge base of adversary techniques and tactics based on real-world observations. Okay, so these are real-world attacks that have been observed in the wild. And the attack matrix is used as a foundation for the development of specific threat models and methodologies. And this is true in the private sector, government, cybersecurity products, business services, you name it. So this index continues to evolve with the threat landscape, which is awesome. So we're able to keep up with the current threats that are out there. Now, today we are looking at MITRE ATT&CK through the lens of a blue teamer, a defender. However, this is also a resource that can be leveraged by red teams to do some sort of threat simulation, right, with the blue team. And that ultimately comes under the umbrella of a purple team exercise, where the red teamers are able to test the blue teamers' detections, okay, which is a really effective way on validating your detections. It's really, really important that we have some sort of validation when it comes to deploying our detections. So MITRE ATT&CK matrix is great for that purpose. There is a ton of detections and techniques, sub-techniques. This is a very, very, very robust knowledge base, and you might get lost. To be quite honest, I've gotten lost a few times myself, but the point is that you can find just about anything here. And so this is a great starting point for those who may not know exactly, where to start. This is just a great launching pad for that. And you get a lot of great information and detail behind the specific use case that you're trying to protect the organization from. Like I mentioned, MITRE can be used for various different or from various different approaches. Now, you can use this for threat hunting even, okay? Ultimately, we just want to use this to enrich our data, to provide better investigations, to quickly identify threat actors, and help us integrate some of our solutions for better security coverage. So I may mention that mapping to MITRE could be a little daunting, especially if you're trying to map every single behavior to a MITRE ATT&CK tactic or technique. It wouldn't be the easiest lift in the world. So this is, we'll later show you how we can operationalize this a lot easier using some of our other applications such as Splunk Security Essentials and our enterprise security content update packages that come inside of Splunk Enterprise Security, okay? Okay, so we got a nice breakdown of the MITRE ATT&CK framework and where, or its importance to the environment. Let's now dive in and show you where you can find this lookup table inside of enterprise security. All right, so back in Splunk Enterprise Security, we're going to use configure, data enrichment, threat intelligence management. Now, you might have to search for this, but as you can see, we have the MITRE ATT&CK matrix being ingested on a 24-hour interval here. All right, and this is enabled by default. Okay, you don't have to click on this. This is just to illustrate or to show you where it lives and how often we are pulling in the latest and greatest information regarding the MITRE ATT&CK matrix. And that is the actual name of the MITRE ATT&CK lookup inside of Splunk Enterprise Security. So if you ever wanted to invoke that ad hoc in a SPL, you would use that naming scheme right there. Okay, so let's navigate to the second lab specific dashboard in the RBA Journey app to examine the MITRE ATT&CK framework lookup that resides in enterprise security. And note the MITRE technique ID, which is what the annotations in enterprise security use to determine the human readable tactic and technique that is displayed for the analyst. All right, so typically a pretty important field to leverage inside of the environment. So if you head back to our RBA Journey application, okay? Hopefully you still have this up. Labs, MITRE breakdown. And again, this is just showing you what is inside of that lookup table. What information are we pulling and getting from that lookup table? Like I mentioned earlier, we can do a lot of things with the MITRE ATT&CK data and any other security framework that you map to. And some of the other added benefits are listed here, where we can close the visibility gaps, compare to adversaries, and do some threat modeling, right? So it's a pretty verbose use case here with MITRE ATT&CK and other cybersecurity frameworks. Now, don't think MITRE ATT&CK, again, as the end-all, be-all. Again, like I mentioned, think of this as a guide when you don't know where to go, right? You know that you want to track this certain use case or this certain behavior, but you're not exactly sure what might be needed to accomplish that. This is a great starting point. And again, we're gonna show you this in a more comprehensive way later on in the workshop, where we dive into Splunk Splunk Security Essentials. And most importantly, if things do kind of go awry with MITRE ATT&CK, try to stick with tactics, techniques, and procedures that pertain or are relevant to your environment and to the assets and things that you protect. So make sure that's aligned properly. And that'll help you get back on track if this does kind of go off the rails, right? And again, most importantly, make sure and test your detections. You don't want to live with the false sense of security that you have a specific technique or tactic covered, only to find out that you're actually blind to that particular attack. All right, we talked a lot about risk factors. So now we're going to jump into a hands-on exercise on how we can dynamically adjust the risk score for an entity. Now, some use cases regarding risk factors. We might want to increase the risk score exponentially if it's a highly sensitive server, right? Maybe a database that holds credit card information, PII, right? Those sorts of things. Maybe we increase the risk score for web-facing servers. Okay, so, or maybe even somebody that's on a watch list, a contractor of some sort. Okay, so again, we can get creative here and start to dynamically, increase the risk inside of the environment. So the assets and identity lookups add system and user context to our attributions, which should be written to the risk index, which ultimately gives us gives the risk framework a shot at increasing the score based on the context from that user or that system. And the risk factoring framework, I think I mentioned this, it can operate on any field that we see fit inside the risk index. Now, before we can create the risk factor to raise the score on this user that's on the watch list, we need to make sure that we have a user on the watch list. Okay, so we're going to navigate to the RBA Journey companion app here for the workshop, and it's going to be labeled Exercise 3 under the Labs dropdown. And we're going to click the risk factor number 3, all right, and you should end up with a page like here. I'm going to navigate there myself, drop down risk factors. Okay, so we can see that again we are invoking our identities lookup table here with this input lookup command. It expands it out, and we're searching the watch list field where it's equal to true. All right, so let's now go. Okay. In that, let's grab this and let's head out to a search tab. Okay. So grabbing this search right here, the input lookup, right? And just right clicking on the search option right here and opening it up in a new tab. Okay, so here we're going to paste it in and we're going to hit enter. All right, so this is a live look at our identities lookup table. We're going to scroll a little bit to the right here, looking for our watch list field here. We can see that we have a few people on the watch list. Okay, So now that that has been confirmed, we are now going to dynamically adjust the risk score. Now we need to navigate back to Splunk Enterprise Security. Hopefully you still have that up. Once you have arrived here at Enterprise Security, we're going to click Configure, and it'll be the fourth option down here, Risk Factor Editor. So this is our interface here. Now there's an option where we can do this in the SPL, but this is quite intuitive, really. And we also have some pre-built risk factors that come out of the box with Enterprise Security, okay? So I advise you to explore those, if you have time. But really, we're going to create our own risk factor. Okay, so down here at the bottom left-hand corner, I'm going to add a risk factor. All right, sometimes this enable button automatically toggles on. If not, make sure and do that. We're going to populate this first box with Broccoli user watch list. Okay. And I believe you guys have the lab guide as well. So if you want to copy and paste, you can do that as well. So we got our description now. Our operation, we're going to use a multiplication operation here. And we're going to increase that to 2. All right, and our field here is going to be user underscore watch list. We're going to set that to true. And you can see that it's built out in SPL for us, but this is something, again, that we can use directly in our search bar if needed. So once all of that has been configured, click Save and close that out. Now let's head back to our RBA Companion Journey application here under Apps. And let's just do a refresh. We should have a giant 1. If we did this correctly, you should have a giant 1 displaying here on the right-hand side. All right, so we've done this. Let's move ahead. All right, so this is where we should all be. Hopefully this is a good pace for everybody. Don't want to go too fast, but please let us know in the chat if I'm going too fast, you need some more time to catch up. Otherwise, we're going to keep pushing here. All right, time to start looking at some risk rules. Now, use cases are typically dictated by some sort of business-related risk. That's typically where you're going to get your use cases from. Now, this is still, or it can still be difficult to build out content for your environment with those business-related risks already articulated to you, right? So we talked about what helps this process and map into some sort of cybersecurity framework. Also helps this, in our case, MITRE ATT&CK. But I made mention that we have a few other routes we can go down. The main ones being Security Essentials, completely free app, and Enterprise Security Content Updates. Again, something that comes inside of Enterprise Security out of the box. So we're going to leverage those, again, to help facilitate our detection engineering here. So we've been tasked with choosing a discovery tactic. Okay, so this, again, some sort of reconnaissance related tactic coming from an attacker, typically really noisy, something that we don't want to alert on oftentimes. But again, here with RBA, this is a perfect use case, and that's exactly why we chose this, to showcase how RBA stands up against these types of detections. Now, if we were to throw this into a Google search and go to MITRE ATT&CK's website, look at the discovery page there or section, we can see that there's a lot to choose from, right? We talked about this already. Very verbose repository here of real live tactics to choose from. But luckily for us, our upper management has made it quite easy that we're concerned about threat actors using network discovery commands on the network. Okay, so we've landed on this particular tactic or technique, 1016, System Network Configuration Discovery. All right, so here's where we get some help from our free application, Splunk Security Essentials. Okay, so let's dive into that and see how this can help us get things going. So there's really four main components or pillars to Security Essentials. Very verbose app, but the first one, as you can see, finding content. Back when I was a detection engineer, I wish I would have used this a lot more because it would have made my life so much easier. But the content in here is vast. There's so much content here, and you're gonna see a little bit of that if you're not familiar with it already, to choose from. And there's also the learning side of this, right, where you can learn some really complex things about Splunk. This application houses T-stats, a cloth talk on T-stats and a breakdown of T-stats that I use to really get a better understanding of T-stats. And so again, just so much here for our customers, right? And so another thing you can use this for is measuring your success. So we have a roadmap in here where you want to get in your vital data sources, firewall, endpoint logs, authentication logs, etc. So again, you have something that you can benchmark to, right? You want to have something that you're able to compare yourself against to see how well you're matching up against the threats out there, okay? And of course, this ultimately leads to just an improvement in production, right? Things run a lot smoother as these searches that are in Security Essentials are very optimized and efficient. So there's over 900 different detections that we can explore and choose from. Don't recommend turning on all of them, all right? Just exploring, making sure that making sure the ones that you choose are the ones that are actually going to be applicable to the environment. And really, when it comes to detection engineering in general, this is more or less the process here. First, we need to identify some sort of content that we want to enable, and it needs to be based on the data sources that we have available. And if we don't have them, we can see about getting those into Splunk, right, for this coverage. But that's step one, and that's what we're doing here. The next one, we're validating this search. Okay, so oftentimes these searches, they are ready to go out of the box. However, you'll find from time to time that you do need to tweak them a bit in order to have them fire properly. Okay, so we're going to go through that process as well. Then there's a little bit of tuning, typically, right, to make sure things are up to par with our expectations. And the most important one, validating the logic, making sure, again, that this actually does detect the activity that we're looking to catch. And after that, it's rinse and repeat. All right, so we're now going to explore Security Essentials. So by clicking the apps dropdown, we should find Security Essentials somewhere in our app selection here. So let's navigate there. Now, once we have arrived in Security Essentials, we're going to click the Analytics Advisor, and we're going to select the MITRE ATT&CK framework. All right, so this is MITRE ATT&CK tactic, or MITRE ATT&CK matrix here, right? So this is everything we need here. But most importantly, what we're after here is the discovery system network configuration use case. So we're going to find the discovery column, which should be somewhere right here in the middle, right? And then scroll down to where we find the system network configuration discovery. And as you guys are doing that, I'm going to start heading there myself. So this will be okay. If you got this pop up, just run the query anyway. Okay, here we go. System network configuration discovery. All right, so once you have that selected, we're going to scroll down here, this green button here, drill down to content selected or selection at the bottom left. All right, so you should be at this page here now. Now, one thing to note here is that the detections they're labeled for a specific security product, typically, or just Splunk product in general. So the normal green greater than sign here, the Splunk logo, right? So that's going to be something that you can utilize in a core Splunk environment, right? So you don't need enterprise security or anything like that in order to be successful in implementing this use case. Now, if we scroll down here a bit, you'll see that we have this lock with crosshairs with it as well. And so this is going to be specific or just for Splunk Enterprise Security, okay? So when you're in here choosing content, make sure that you have the right Splunk product in order to successfully implement the use case. All right, so for our purpose, if you didn't get dropped into the proper use case, if you type in detect processes used, it should come up for our use case for today. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Okay, so once you type in some of the title here, detect processes used for system network configuration, up here in the search bar. All right. Scroll down, you'll see that we have various stages here: collection, stage 1, stage 2, normalization. Come down here to stage 3, expansion. All right, and we should have our detection that we're interested in implementing here. And once you've found that, go ahead and click on the label there. And here's where the power of Security Essentials really starts to shine. So here at the very top, we're gonna start here on the left-hand side. We get great information pertaining to the use case itself, how to implement it. And my favorite here is the known false positives. We talked about this at the beginning of the workshop, all of the alerts that are bombarding the SOC. So up front, we know what we're getting ourselves into, okay? So there should be no surprise of what comes or what work comes when implementing this use case. Now, we're able to also view sample data, right? But coming over here, it shows you what data sources you need to be successful, what kill chain this pertains to in attack groups or threat groups, right? All of this information here, all of these annotations will be applied or can be applied to your detections. So when this pops up in incident review, which we'll show that here in a little bit, but you can understand where an attacker or threat actor might be in the kill chain. Really powerful stuff here. All right, so if we scroll down a little bit more, there's some other great content associated with this. So starting here, there's some macros that are that are needed in order to be successful. So Splunk has already checked this for us, so we're good to go. This one, we're okay. Now, it comes with the search, okay? And we can run this here inside of our environment or inside of Security Essentials without having to go anywhere. Okay, and if you want to run this, which I suggest you do, go ahead and click the drop down to all time, okay, and click search. And here we go. This is Detection Engineering 101 right here. All right. I'll hop back to the slide view. Get us caught up here, okay? So this is where everyone should be right now. We're here inside of Security Essentials. We just run the network system configuration discovery use case. Remember to use all time just for today's workshop, right? We never do this in production. Here are the results that you should have gotten back, something similar, right? Now here's another great functionality of Security Essentials. This links directly to our correlation search setup or correlation search setup page in Enterprise Security. So click this button here. We're going to edit this now in Enterprise Security versus in Security Essentials. All right, and so here, this is where we build correlation searches. This is where we add the RBA framework or the risk analysis to the correlation search. All of that stuff happens here. The annotations, as you can see here in the slide, where we're mapping to the kill chain, MITRE, everything happens right here. Now, the stars here in this slide are, they're over the search portion of the detection, right? And this is where also assets and identities is being leveraged as well. Okay, and if you scroll down, we'll just jump into this together here. So if you scroll down here, all the way down to the risk analysis, adaptive response action, this is where we're leveraging the RBA framework now. Okay, so this is where we're going to create our first risk rule, okay, by utilizing this right here. And those fancy dollar signs with words in them, those are just tokens, really just variables, essentially. So in the risk message, it's a nice addition. So when this rule fires, it'll have the actual data that was found in the event inside of this risk message for the analyst. Okay, so it'll read image file execution options injected X, right, on host X from user X, right? So all of that context is going to be right there in the risk message for the analyst to read and get a nice breakdown of what this just captured and how to prioritize this alert. So most people don't know, and quite frankly, our documentation doesn't do a great job of calling this out. But if you create a risk score in the SPL of the correlation search, that is going to override the risk score assigned with the adaptive response action. Okay? So some examples of where you might do this is, let's take proxy authentication request, for example. There may be a risk score assigned to a domain, or maybe a vendor has assigned a risk score to something that you want to use versus coming up with your own risk score or creating it in the risk analysis adaptive response action. Okay, so again, the options are up to you, or the choice is up to you, and the options are quite vast, right? Okay, so this is a great start, but we want to modify the search to make sure that it works for our environment. Okay, so let's head back to content management to clone the search. All right, so we should still be in the correlation page setup. All All right. And down at the bottom here, you should see this button here, back to content management. I'm going to click that. And we can search for our detection. Okay, so type in detect process. Okay, and here we have our out of the box enterprise security content update. We're going to click clone. And instead of having the ESCU label here, we're going to label it RR for risk rule, okay? Then we're going to hit the drop down on application. And we're going to select the RBA Journey app, the application where all the labs are housed. Click clone. And once that has done, once it's done cloning the use case, go ahead and click the link to open up our new rule. Now for our search, we're going to copy this. And now you can use whatever search bar or search tab that you want to do. I'm going to stay in enterprise security myself. Okay, so I'm going to click search, come down to our last option, search, right click, open a new tab. All right, we all should be there. Okay, so some quick Splunk tips. All right, this is something that we kind of already touched on, but it's a little different here. Once you paste that search into the search bar, it's going to be, all jumbled up, right? It's not going to automatically format like it would if we were typing this out manually, okay? So how we fix this? Well, first, we should copy the search, okay? And we're going to expand the macros inside of the search. And let me come over here and show you exactly what these macros are, okay? Okay, so a macro would look something like this. It'll be wrapped in backticks, okay? But what it's doing is, or under the hood, it has SPL under the hood. So it's actually doing some sort of search command, okay? And now if you ever want to find out what exactly is under the hood of the macro, you can, obviously go to the macros inside of the macro section here in Splunk, but you can also click inside of the search bar and hit Control-Shift-E if you're on Windows, or Command-Shift-E if you are on a MacBook. Okay. And that will expand out this search. All right, so go ahead and click Open as a new search, as we're going to need both of these searches here. I'll show you why. All right, but now let's head back to that previous search that's not expanded, the macros aren't expanded, and it's not properly formatted. So how you format the search is using a command pipe if you are on a Mac, or a control pipe if you're on a Windows. Okay, so that will automatically format the search for you. Okay. All right, just to reiterate, that might have been a little fast. So we should have two search windows open. One from the original search that we copied here from our new risk rule, right? We should have that in one search bar, search tab. And once we expanded this with the Control-Shift-E or Command-Shift-E, We then open this search into a new search window. All right, let's head back over to the slides. All right, so we're going to step through this process together. All right, so we've picked out our content. We are now validating the search, reviewing it, making sure that it actually fires in our environment. Okay, so this is what we're doing right now, validating the base search. So head over back to the RBA Journey Companion app, hit the Labs dropdown, and we're now inside of exercise 4. Once you're there, you'll see this search right here. All right, so we're going to copy this. And we're going to throw that into a new search window, okay? So I'm going to head there, go through those exact same steps right now. Right-clicking on search, opening up a new search tab, pasting it in there, okay? All right, so these are the steps or the things that Alice wants to go over. So first one being add a span to the T-stats to have a more specific time, okay? So here in that search that we just copied over from exercise 4, this box right here is highlighting us adding the span equals 1 second. And to note, in order to do this, you need to have underscore time in your search, okay? So after this by clause, you need underscore time in order to bend the events in a 1 second time frame. So step 2, Alice revised the process search. Okay, so she was only interested in specific processes, okay? So we've added in the ones that we're interested in. Okay, so taking a step back to the macro conversation. The macro here, all right, if you're interested in learning more about that and seeing what all goes into it, we have settings, advanced search, macros. You guys don't have to do this, but you can just kind of follow along. All right, and in here, we can see, oh, I think that was actually the wrong one. This will be a better illustration. So here, we have this macro here, right? And I mentioned how there's a search or an SPL that goes into building this macro, okay? So if you're ever curious or if you want to make some changes to it, you can either do it in the SPL or you can come here into the macro and do the changes there, right? I clicked on one, wasn't the right one, but you can make modifications here if needed, okay? So you can kind of think of this like as in programming where you create, maybe a function and it takes some sort of parameters or arguments, right? Your macros function much of the same, okay? All right, step 3, Alice removed the transaction command in the where clause. And the reason being is because since and let's find here we go. So these two commands right here with our data set, since we're working on stale data back from 2019, these effectively wouldn't work. All right, so that's why we're getting rid of these and adding in something different here, which would be the stats command. Okay, so we're doing a stats count by the desk user, process name, the process, parent process, and the time. Finally, we re-added the macro that further filters the processes, and instead, right, we went this route versus a few slides back, going this route, right? So you would have to do either or. Either you put this big mess of SPL inside the search to filter out your results, or you can make a nice macro and make it look nice and pretty. So that's the route we went. All right. Okay. Hopefully that all made sense. But this is ultimately the search that we have concluded with. So we're going to take this one, okay? We're going to copy it, come back to our correlation search, the risk rule that we had up, okay? We're going to paste it inside of this here, inside of this search bar here. All right, everything else has already been done for us, thanks to Splunk Security Essentials. Now, we're again looking at stale data, so we're going to actually have this time frame span all the way back to 2,000 days, and that should be enough to cover us. We're going to select or input now, okay? So looking back 2,000 days up till now, or the point of when this search will run. And we are going to have a cron set to run every 10 minutes. Okay, let me grab that. All right, so we got our cron set to run every 10 minutes. We're going to scroll on down some more to our throttling section. And we're going to set this to 1 week. And we're going to group by _time. And after you type in a field, make sure and hit enter. So that way it'll take that value. So time, source, enter, user, enter, dest, enter, and parent _process, enter. Okay. Now, effectively, what we're doing here, we're essentially telling Splunk that, hey, if you find the same event with the exact same time, exact same source, user, desk, parent, process, I don't want to see that event for a week. Okay. So throttling the results a little bit. And this is really more specific for our use case today in the workshop, all right? Okay, now we're going to get rid of the notable adaptive response action, as this tells Splunk that we want to make a notable event out of it, which will then appear in the incident review page for the analyst. All right, so we don't want this because this is, again, our risk rule where this will be sent to the risk index, where we will then create the risk incident rule and attach the notable adaptive response action. Okay. So go ahead and remove the notable adaptive response action from the notable event, or the risk rule, rather. Once you've done that, let's beef up the information inside of the risk analysis adaptive response action. Okay. So we're going to add a risk score of 10 to the destination. And notice here, everything that we've talked about thus far in the workshop, right? Risk scores, risk objects, risk object type. This is all where that lives, okay? So each time this fires, this risk rule fires, and it's sent to the risk index, the destination will have a risk rule, or excuse me, a risk score of 10 associated with it, and it's going to be assigned to the destination, okay? And with the combination of our assets and identities in that context now, right, we'll have so much information on that destination, okay? Same with the user. All right, so hopefully you're starting to see where, you know, the work that we've done, everything that we've talked about, where it comes into play when we start to actually implement and roll out risk-based alerting. All right, now don't forget to add another risk modifier, okay? And we're gonna do the exact same thing, except we're just going to have a user, the user field in this next one, and the user as the object. All right, you should have an option for threat objects as well. And think back to when we were talking about this, these are more of your IOCs, the things that you're hunting for when building out your risk rules. So in our case, the system network discovery configuration, where we are observing processes that are enumerating the network for information, those are the things that we want to observe. Those are the things that we want to know about. So in our particular case, the threat object, right? So user X on destination X ran this command, and it had this parent process that launched it, okay? So we're starting to build behavior, and we're starting to paint the picture, right? All right, so I'm gonna hop in my environment, do the same. Hopefully this gives you guys some time to catch up if anybody is falling behind. Okay, so it looks like that was already there. Okay. Or actually, no, this is wrong. Should just be parent process. Okay. So hopefully you guys caught that. If you didn't, it should just be parent process. Okay, so that field, right? Threat object field, parent process. Scrolling up to our correlation search, parent process up here. Okay. All right. Okay. So once we've done all of those configurations, let's click save. Nothing worse than having to redo the content. Give me a second. It's complaining about my cron schedule. I think I got an unneeded space. There we go. Okay. So we're going to click close on that. All right. So now let's go back to content management. Okay. Click back. We'll actually go back to the slides here. Okay, so search for your or our risk rule. Okay, we can put in RR-detection processes, and it should pop up. Okay, once that pops up, make sure we enable this. Okay, really important. All right, so we're going to enable some more content. Let's do that now. Okay, so inside of content management, the type, we want to select correlation search, and the app context, we want RBA journey. Okay. Now, we are going to enable all of the searches that are disabled right now. The only one that should be enabled is the one that we just got done enabling. Okay. So every single RR rule, risk rule, should be enabled. All right. Now that we have all of those correlation searches enabled, it's break time. And the reason why this break is so long, 15 minutes, is because we need some time, or we need to give Splunk some time to run those searches in the background. Okay, so they're running every 10 minutes. All right, so we need to give them 10 minutes at the very least. Give you an extra 5 just because I'm sure we can all use a nice little break, get some water, that sort of thing. Actually, so I like even numbers. So let's return back here at 3:40 for those who are in Eastern time zone. Okay.
Hey, Mike, let me cover one question that came up in the chat window, and that is, how long today will these lab servers be available after the workshop ends?
Great question, everyone. Yeah, sorry I forgot to mention that earlier. So I think these will be up for, let me double check, but I think they're going to be up till 1800 Eastern Standard Time, so 6 Eastern Standard. I'll double check, it might be 8. However, for those of you who are really interested in this and want to play around, reach out to your SC, your account manager, as we can spin these up ad hoc and go over them with you, and you have a sandbox essentially to play around with. Okay, so
perfect. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, sir. Okay, everyone. So we'll reconvene here back at 3:40.